You are now listening to the Soul and Wonder Podcast, Episode 40, Psychedelics and Spiritual Growth with Dennis McKenna.
Welcome to the Soul and Wonder Podcast, where the conduits of the body, depths of the mind, and atlas of the soul are explored with devotion. Through cultural exchange, Christopher and Sara and their guests will deliver sacred wisdom from around the globe, uncovering the hidden gems of conscious living and holistic healing, all to empower you on your journey of self-discovery. And now, here are your hosts, Christopher and Sara.
Welcome to the Soul and Wonder Podcast. We are your hosts, Sara and Christopher.
Hello, everybody.
We're so happy to have you here in this awesome conversation and interview where we get to share space with Dennis McKenna. Some of you may have heard of his brother, Terence McKenna, a well-known ethnobotanist, psychonaut, mystic, and philosopher. And Dennis is just as cool. We're so excited to dive into his story. But before we do, I want to read some... I want to share with you a lovely love note, a review left for us on our iTunes by Tiffany L. Campos, 1986. She says, "This podcast is awesome," all caps. "Not only is it creative, informative, and beneficial, you get information that is extremely helpful." We're glad you feel that way, Tiffany, because we think that our guests are super great and they bring a wealth of knowledge to you, and we just absolutely love doing this.
Yes, it is such a pleasure doing this, and we like to bring on a wide variety of people from all walks of life. And it takes a lot of time to plan ahead for all of these episodes, but we want to be diverse in the sense of bringing topics that you're going to enjoy. So with that being said, if there is somebody or a topic that you may want covered within the holistic healing realm, that's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual development, let us know and we will do our best to get them on.
Absolutely. And Christopher, tell them about what's coming.
So we are leaving on Monday, this coming Monday, November 20th, for Sarasota, Florida, where we're going to be speaking at the Solutionary Health Festival on Saturday, November 25th. We are going to be premiering our keynote topic, Finding Health, Happiness, and Connection, the Body, Mind, Soul Approach to Veganism. So we're super stoked for this. Really stoked to share the space with some amazing speakers, vendors. There's going to just be so much happening down there. So if you are in the Sarasota area or the surrounding areas in Tampa, Venice, wherever, please come out and join us. It's going to be a great day. We're really looking forward to it.
There's going to be music and food, vegan food.
Yes, all very delicious.
Yes, absolutely. Now, you're probably like, all right, I want to know about Dennis because he's so awesome. Dennis McKenna is a pharmacognosist, lecturer, and author, and has conducted research for over 30 years in ethnopharmacology, which is the scientific study of substances used medicinally by different ethnic or indigenous groups. He is a founding board member of the Hefter Research Institute and was a key investigator on the Huasca Project, the first biomedical investigation of ayahuasca, which, if you haven't already, backtrack in time a little bit and check out some of our earlier episodes of this podcast where we talk about our own personal experience with the wonderful plant medicine of ayahuasca and interview someone about his life and how it changed him through the use of this plant medicine.
Yes, I believe it's episode 5 and 6 or 4 and 5. I can't quite remember, but we do detail a lot about our experiences with ayahuasca and, as Sara mentioned, other people's experiences.
Yes, so Dennis is currently the assistant professor in the Center for Spirituality and Healing at the University of Minnesota, so that's where you can find him. And in this conversation, we really break it down. Obviously one of those talks that could have gone for 6 hours. So we jam-packed it with a bunch of interesting philosophical conversation. We talked about the chain of events leading to the beginning of Dennis and Terrence's journey into the realm of psychedelics, which is where he shares with us his super intriguing experience with mushrooms at La Chorrera in the Amazon jungle in 1971. Some of you are probably already familiar with that story if you've read any of his brother Terrence's work. Dennis also shares it in his book, The Brotherhood of the Screaming Abyss. So we also talk about psychedelic phenomena of seemingly telepathic powers, the ability to pierce the veil, and more, catalyzing our journey of exploration into the mystery. And we dive into curious premonitions of how different this world might be if the majority of our modern Western population safely indulged in hallucinogenic experiences and implemented those lessons learned into their daily lives. And let me tell you, it's a much better world to live in. If only it could come true. And of course, Dennis brings us up to date on the happenings in his life and research and gives us some wonderful advice and words of wisdom on how to make this world a better place.
Yes, so stay tuned. That interview is coming up. But before we get to that, we do want to say that majority of our interviews are done via Skype or Zoom. Unfortunately, we can't be in person with everybody, although we wish we could. So therefore, sometimes the audio can be not the best. We try to edit it to where it can be, where you can listen to it and feel comfortable with where it's at. But again, it's not always going to be tip-top shape. So please bear with us as we work through some of this stuff. And eventually in the future, we'll be having more guests in person so we can then provide a little bit better audio quality for you.
Absolutely. And of course, stick around to the health tip of the episode at the end of the interview.
All right, let's get ready for Dennis.
Enjoy. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are super happy to have Dennis McKenna on the show with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
As we said before we were recording, we're just super happy to have you here. There's so many things we could talk about. And, I just want to dive in from the beginning. I think a lot of people are wondering, where did this all begin for you? What experience or moment in time specifically piqued your interest in the study of plant medicine and hallucinogenic drugs in general in relation to the human psyche and consciousness?
Well, I don't know if there was any one event. There were a few events that kind of triggered it. I'm 66, so I was a child of the 60s, right? And in that time, there was a lot of interest in psychedelics and all that. And it was a very turbulent time, political unrest, not unlike today. We had Vietnam, we had all of that. But I would have to credit two of course, my brother was a big influence on me because he was 4 years older than I was, than I am, or whatever you say it. And so he was in Berkeley at the time, starting school or being involved in, at least nominally enrolled in school, but kind of at the heart of the social and cultural ferment. Well, I was still a high schooler stuck back in this town in Western Colorado, so and wanting to be out there, and but I did in fact get to go to Berkeley and Haight-Ashbury in 1967, which was the summer of love, as you know, supposedly. And what possessed my father to let me go? I have no idea. He didn't approve of any of this, and he had to, and we were kind of at loggerheads about it. But for whatever reason, he let me go. So I guess, I had my first real psychedelic experience there in Berkeley in 1967, which was, like a lot of people, LSD. And, we just basically got it off the streets, but it turned out to be pretty good. And so that was a revelation. But the real revelation didn't come until I got home, and we took. I took back with me a sample of DMT, which Terrence was able to get. Very rare those days. Very hard to get a hold of, but he worked the matrix, and he had stuff, and he thought that it was far more interesting than LSD. Or mescaline or any of the other things that were floating around that he tried. And when I got it back to Colorado and went up to a remote place in western Colorado to bioassay it, do the classical large animal bioassay, I had to agree it was pretty incredible and amazing. And so we were on the same page, my brother and I, about that yes, the psychedelics as a group are very interesting. DMT is the most interesting.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, and in fact, we thought it was not just the most interesting drug we'd encountered, in our limited experience. It was simply the most interesting thing we'd stumbled across in our lives, I mean, it was sort of like, how can something like this even exist? So that's really what got us interested in altered states and psychedelics. And eventually, we found out about the shamanic traditions associated with these things, which gave us a context, for sort of learning about them. In the 60s, I think LSD had such an impact on our culture because there was really not much of a cultural context. You had Timothy Leary out there who was proselytizing for it, evangelizing for it. Everybody else was appalled. There was very little awareness in the culture that actually these things had been around for thousands of years. And, there were ways to use them, and people had been using them. So it was really the discovery of the cultural context that helped my brother and myself to orient ourselves to where these things might be, where their origins were, and what they really were. So when we discovered discovered DMT. It was quite amazing, but one of the things about it was very short, as you know. It only lasted 15 minutes or so. And so we thought it might be interesting if we could find a longer lasting version of it so you could spend more time in that state. Oh, an orally active version, in fact, we naively thought. And then a few years later, we stumbled on a paper called Varrola as an orally active hallucinogen, and it was by Richard Schultes, who is the famous Harvard ethnobotanist that really, spent many years in the Amazon tracking down a lot of these psychoactive plants. The fact that Varrola is the genus it's a genus of trees in the nutmeg family, actually, where they use the bark or the sap mainly, to make a snuff. Certain tribes make a snuff out of it. The Yanomami and other related tribes. And the sap of Varrolas are very high in DMT, as well as 5-methoxy-DMT and so on. So, but they make a snuff out of it, so it's also short-acting, right? So, but when we found out there were some other tribes, namely the Witotos, that make an orally active form of DMT, we thought, that's it. We got to go for that. And so, that's the secret. Well, it turns out that no, it wasn't the secret, but it did lead us to drop everything, drop out of school, quit jobs, whatever, careers or whatever we thought we had that didn't matter. Because we were off on a great adventure. We were looking for the secret, which is what we called it. We didn't know what it was, but we knew it had to be important, right? And so that is what led us to go to South America for the first time in 1971, was to look for this obscure Witoto hallucinogen. And we went to La Chorrera only because it was the ancestral home of the Witotos. And, long story short, so we went there in search of this thing. When we got there, which was another arduous, adventure, but when we finally ended up there, we had met an anthropologist on the way in as we went up one of these rivers. The way you get there is we went down the Putumayo River and up another river called the Igaraparaná, and then across the trail to a parallel river, and that was where La Chorrera was. And so when we went up the first river, we encountered an anthropologist at a little village, and he was studying the Witoto, and we kind of expected to run into him. We'd been told by people in Bogota that Dr. Guzman his actual name was Horatio Collier, but in my brother's book he was called Guzman, but that he was out working with his people. So they said, yeah, you'll probably run into him. And so we kind of were expecting to. And when we went to this village, there he was with this little English wife, very peculiar couple. And, we were expecting to encounter him. He was in no way expected to encounter us, and he was pretty appalled when we just showed up out of nowhere. No communication in those days. You couldn't send a text or an email.
Sure.
And so we march into this village, and by this time there are about 5 of us, and we are far more colorful than the Witoto. I mean, we're like right out of Haight-Ashbury. We have beards down to our waist. We have bells and beads and the whole 9 yards, right? And so it's like, who in the hell are these people?
How the hell did you end up here?
Yeah, right. I mean, and then when we so we were there, but in the manner of jungle hospitality, of course, they did say, you're not welcome. They gave us a hut on the edge of the village to stay overnight, and Dr. Collier hoped it was only overnight, I'm sure. But in the conversation, we told him we were headed to La Chorrera, and we were trying to find this Witoto drug, which was called ukuhe, and he totally freaked out. He said, you cannot go in there and start talking about this because they will kill you. And this is the biggest secret of the Witoto shamans. They don't even talk about it to their own people. This is
wow.
A big thing. And how did you find out about it? And, oh my God, why are you here? And
wow.
He was quite wound up about it, and I think that constantly chewing coca also, which he did, was a little paranoid,
I can see why.
Right. So we were like, okay, yeah, doc, whatever, don't worry about it, we'll be cool, So after a couple days, we went on up the trail, we got to La Chorrera, and, despite what our casual attitude, we really did respect what he said, and we were not about to just blurt it out. We were going to settle in and check out the scene, and find if there was an informant who could really talk to us about it. So we did that, but then what we encountered when we got to La Chorrera was unexpected. It was the little mission village around which they have had cleared some pasture. They cleared the forest for about 200 acres all around the village. They brought in these Cebu cattle, which are the white humped cattle, that's common in the tropics. That is the preferred substrate for psilocybe cubensis, which is the pan-tropical psilocybin mushroom. And we had hit the top, the peak season apparently, because out of every cow pie were these big, beautiful clusters of psilocybin mushrooms.
Wow.
Which we had no experience with before. Very little. I mean, we had our only previous experiences that on the way into La Trera, we'd been at a village. We stopped at a village on the way and encountered one of these specimens in the pasture and tasted it, but very little effect, not enough. But at La Trera, they were everywhere. And we were very cavalier. We did not realize, when we got there, we thought essentially we approached it as a recreational diversion. We thought these will be great. We can play with these while we're looking for the real mystery, which was this ukuhe, and we can just enjoy the mushrooms. I'm kind of because I'm sure you've probably had experience with mushrooms, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's okay. At low levels, they can be very nice, quite recreational. At higher levels, they can get pretty darn strange.
Oh yes.
They are the equivalent of anything. People don't respect them enough because they don't realize, what's just beyond a low dose level, how bizarre they can get. And so we started eating those things pretty much every day. There wasn't a whole lot else to eat, frankly. I mean, we makes a very nice omelet. We put it in our food. We were eating a lot, and it quickly became clear, kind of, that that was the real mystery. We'd gone looking for this orally active form of DMT, right? Well, actually, psilocybin is the perfect orally active form of DMT, if you know anything about the chemistry.
Sure.
So psilocybin is converted to psilocin in the body. And that trivial molecular difference from DMT, just one atom, is psilocin is 4-hydroxydimethyltryptamine.
Mm-hmm.
And that one difference is enough to make it orally active. And why it does that, we don't need to go into here. But usually DMT, you have to combine it with an MAO inhibitor, as an ayahuasca, then that protects it from being broken down. But psilocin doesn't require that. So it's ready to go, as it were. No preparation required. Just the effort to bend down and pick it up and eat it.
Pop it in, you're good to go.
Pop it in and you're good to go. Boy, oh boy, did we go. Quickly started explaining a few things. And it's like we were in the presence of an intelligent entity. We didn't know whether it was the mushrooms or whether it was something communicating through the mushrooms. We were not sure, but we were not sure about everything at that point. But we conceived of this thing as the teacher, and we even called it the teacher. And what was it teaching us? It was teaching us a number of things. And this is where I hesitate to get too much into the details, because we'll never get out of them,
Down the rabbit hole.
Right. So have either of you read have you read True Hallucinations, or
Yes.
Okay, so you know this story. Right? And basically the mushroom started downloading information about how to transform our bodies and our DNA, essentially into a UFO. If the UFO is a metaphor for the ultimate physical object, or in this case, I would say the ultimate biophysical object, as so many of these sorts of, in history, I mean, esoteric philosophy and all this idea of something that is kind of a machine, kind of an organism, kind of a substance, kind of something, that has miraculous properties. So the alchemists called it the Philosopher's Stone. We call it the UFO. But it's the same thing. It's the ultimate artifact. And the mushroom was basically giving us instructions, almost a blueprint. Here's how you make yourself into a UFO or into this transformed object. And we were following the sort of roughly the procedures of alchemy. We were both really steeped in alchemical lore due to our interest in Jung, and that seemed to be a framework for carrying out this transformation. And so we did, and things happened. And in some ways, it changed the world. I mean, Terrence, came away from that with the time wave idea. That's really, the time wave. That was really the origin of his first thinking about time and cycles and all that. And he took away kind of the basic framework of the time wave and worked on it for, the next 30 years or so. And I came away, with some interesting ideas about this biophysical operation that we're trying to carry out. But if you've read True Hallucination, he was kind of the guy who stayed at home when I was the guy who went to the edge of the galaxy. And
sure.
a couple of weeks, and when I finally got back on my feet, I was pretty happy to be on my feet.
Grounded in the earth.
Grounded again. And I don't regret the effect, but the whole experience. But I was pleased that I was able to kind of reintegrate it into consensus reality. And in some respects, I guess you could say that was a wake-up moment for me, because it was it made me want to kind of return my focus to ground down-to-earth issues in a way and study science. I had been studying, at the time before I quit school, I was studying comparative religion, anthropology, and some biology, which was about as close as you could get to ethnobotany. But when I went back, I sort of focused it even more and studied more like chemistry and pharmacology, because I was interested in how these things work and what happened to us. But the one thing, I think the one thing, when we did the experiment at La Chorrera, we had made predictions about what was going to happen, and those things didn't happen, probably because they could not have happened. Would have had to completely undermine the laws of physics, and fine with that, but the laws of physics did not cooperate, and so as a result, something else had to happen. And what happened is we each had these simultaneous altered states, which lasted for about 2 weeks. And we could understand each other perfectly. We knew, in the context of our madness, what was going on. It made sense to us. Our friends who accompanied us, were not so sure.
I can imagine from their perspective.
It looked pretty hairy, and it was like, we have to get these people to a mental health facility. But in the middle of the Amazon, that's kind of hard. So they just had to put up with it. And in the meantime, are raving through the pastures, eating mushrooms, talking constantly, and just being flooded by these ideas. And, so eventually it began to fade away a bit. And we were able to get flown out of there. But it had a lasting impact because in terms of the time wave zero, Terrence obsessed about that for many years. And then the other thing that we took away that was really tangible and actually had an impact was we took home with us spores of the mushrooms. And we spent the next 2 or 3 years trying to figure out how to grow those suckers because we wanted them. We wanted access to the, to the experience, but we also wanted to share that with other people, so they could confirm that yes, there's really a pretty strange dimension out there, or no, the McKenna brothers are just deluded and nuts. We would have settled for either one. But it turns out, as you know, the confirmation was mostly that, they opened some pretty strange portals into someplace. And I think that was really, I don't want to boast, and I'm not boasting, but I'm just saying that really made psychedelics available to a lot of people where it wasn't before. And
absolutely
relatively benign psychedelic, non-toxic. LSD was hard to get for many people. With this little pamphlet that we published, Psilocybin Magic Mushroom Growers Guide, basically any smart 10th grader could figure out how to do this. And, a lot of them did. You could go to the grocery store and buy the ingredients, and if you had the spores and you were patient, you could make it happen. And many did. And so soon those mushrooms, became commonly available. And now of course, there are much better ways to grow them.
Sure.
And I think that had an impact on society in the sense that it gave people access to these dimensions and made them at least think twice about what was going on. And so I can leave it there.
It's very, very fascinating experience, and it sort of sets you up for your life's destiny, for your life's work, what you were meant to do in this world, and to go into an experience with having expectations. Generally what happens is none of that happens overall, and we just let ourselves go and open ourselves up to all these incredible experiences, one which you had with your brother.
Yeah. I think psychedelics, have a profound influence on a lot of people. At least it lets you step out of your reference frame and, for temporarily, and then rethink maybe how you want your life to be, where you want to be going. Not everybody can throw themselves headlong into a life, dedicated to psychedelics. We were a little bit fanatical. We were fanatics because it was the most interesting thing we'd encountered. But I think it's a good tool for everyone, to experience it at least a few times, because it does tell you a lot of things, but it tells you reality is not what it seems. That's what it tells you. Or there are aspects to reality that many people never suspect, and would actually probably not be very happy if they did suspect it.
Very true.
They're sort of little comfortable worlds, and this really challenges a lot of your assumptions. So, and that's a good thing.
I wanted to comment really quickly on how you mentioned that you and the group that you were with, you were having these shared experiences that you could understand each other, although from the outside perspective people weren't quite getting it. I've had that experience too, where we actually had to make up our own language, and we got through it making up this own language for about 16 to 20 hours. And what do you think is going on there? What do you think is happening that in that moment, those who are sharing that same substance and experience understand everything between each other's thoughts, their language that's not even English in our case, and why it seems that we're able to hold on to these realizations even after the substance has worn off? No matter how many realizations you had, it's like you can remember almost every single moment so profoundly, but other people just seem to kind of, it's like there's this wall in between, and it doesn't quite pass through. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think that I think that as far as remembering these things, that's not so surprising, because they're impactful. Usually psychedelic experiences, if they're special, you remember them. Just you like remember other special events in your life. You can probably remember, I don't know, the first time you kissed somebody, or the first time you met love, or the first time you did various things. You may remember those things more vividly than the last time I answered email, for example.
Sure.
Yeah. So they just they're an experience of a different order, that you tend to remember. So it's not so much that surprises me, but what is more surprising is that they to the people that have experienced them, you can't deny that the experiences are very peculiar, and that they make a certain amount of sense. They make a sense within the context of that experience. But people who have not had that, they're going to look at you like, what? Now, about these lizards materializing out of the wall, they just can't grok it. And in some ways, I think that's why psychedelics are, so difficult to discuss in some ways with people that have never had the experience.
Very true.
They don't get it, and they won't get it until they actually do it, and that makes the dialogue difficult. And I think that, I wouldn't be one to say that everybody should take psychedelics. I think most people probably should take them at least once. But if you have proclivities to schizophrenia and that sort of thing, maybe not so much. But generally, a learning tool, and I think, what they tell us many things, or we can learn many things from psychedelics about the nature of reality, about ourselves, and to learn that reality is much more bizarre and amazing than we think it is in just kind of mundane everyday life. I think the quote's been attributed to various people, but I think it was Arthur Eddington or J.B.S. Haldane who said, the world is not only stranger than you suppose, it's stranger than you can suppose. And that really shows it in your face. The psychedelics do, especially something like DMT. And to your question about how can you spend time in 20 hours where you're in a group, everyone in the group kind of knows what's going on. You might even share this language, which is not a common language. I just think that's part of the, you can call it telepathy. It's a kind of I mean, what would telepathy be like? It's hard to say, but those kinds of group experiences do come close to the way you imagine telepathy might be.
Well, I think humans undermine their own power of their consciousness, and then when we take the blinders off, so to say, and we open ourselves up to these worlds, whatever you want to call them, we're able to expose this a lot. It's just in the open, so we're able to have these experiences. And I think a lot of times, obviously, in such a rush that it freaks people out. For my first time, I did DMT. So I went straight from 0 to 100 really quickly. And
more like 100,000.
More like 100,000. I'll give you that.
Only lasted 10 minutes, right?
That's true.
So not too much chance to get into trouble. Well, that's brave, I mean, that's foolish, but brave.
We'll thank her for that one.
It's fine. The most important thing about psychedelics and how to, use them without, is you have to pay attention to set and setting. And of course, you've heard people rant about this. You have to do it. You have to respect them enough to do it in a special place and a special time. That's really all it amounts to.
Absolutely.
Safe, where you're not going to be molested or bothered by anybody who's, not in on the joke, right? And then the place where you can pay attention to what's going on. And I think many people take mushrooms or whatever, but often mushrooms, they take light doses. They go to parties, they go to movies, they socialize and all that. That's fine. I'm not one of these finger waggers. I think people can use it that way, and that's fine. What they rarely suspect is if they up the dose a little bit, they would encounter these experiences that they may take light doses of mushrooms for years and never even suspect that, sort of just around the corner, there are some very strange places and worth exploring, so.
That leads me actually into this next question that I have for you. What do you think would happen to modern Western culture if the majority of our population safely experienced the power of these hallucinogenic plants or substances and then learned how to integrate into their lives the lessons learned from their psychedelic ventures? How do you think that would change our culture?
That was a planted question, wasn't it?
It was.
This for hours. Well, I think that it would generally be a very good thing. If people could experience these things in very well structured sets and settings, if it were legal, and there are different psychedelics have different properties, right? And my, I guess you could say my main plant teacher these days is ayahuasca and psilocybin as well. I don't take it as often. I think it would make a much better world. Frankly, I think it would be a more compassionate world. I think we treat each other better. I think we treat nature better. And this is the problem. The big problem of Western culture is we're becoming estranged from nature.
Yes.
And so we do not value nature. And this is a bad thing, and it's going to come back on us, and it already is. Our minds suffer from the poisoning of 2,000 years of this Abrahamic, male-dominated religion, actually. And they're not... They don't lead us to spiritual experiences. They're designed to make sure we never get near a spiritual experience, and so psychedelics are very threatening to the powers that be in all institutions because they make you have funny ideas. And funny ideas are dangerous.
Yeah.
That's why psychedelics are dangerous. There's a great deal of effort put into the, expended, I guess you could say, in society by the people that think they run things and actually don't, but they think they run things. And much effort is directed toward sort of discouraging people to think for themselves, and encouraging them to swallow a bunch of horse shit, basically, which is presented to them as revealed truth. Psychedelics are the antidote to that, and they are very dangerous in that sense. I am a person who just, I think that many of these religions and so on, they say you have to have faith, you just have to accept it. Saying you have to have faith is to say you have to accept something without any evidence. And, why should we do that? We should agree. We should be skeptical about everything, and that's what's beautiful about psychedelics. You don't have to have faith. What you have to have is courage. Don't believe in it. I don't care if you believe in it. Sit down and smoke the damn pipe, or drink the brew, and make of it what you will. I'm not even here to tell anybody what they're supposed to think about it. That's the difference. In fact, I'm all about telling people, learn to use your own head, learn to use your mind and think for yourself, and just be skeptical of pretty much everything that anybody tells you, because that is where you have true freedom. So many people, I think what's wrong with our society, in many things, but I think what's wrong with our society is many people, they don't want to think for themselves. They would much rather be told what to think. So then you have these religious or corporate or academic figures who are more than happy to tell you what to think. It's like, I've got the truth here. Come follow me. And that's a problem, because it discourages you from really examining sort of the basis of your assumptions. And, I think religions are particularly, guilty of this. But all of these institutions, they do not want people who think for themselves, because those people don't make, they're not good consumers. They're not slaves. They keep causing trouble. They keep asking all these questions. It's inconvenient, and sometimes actually dangerous. And if you look at all these authoritarian movements and all that have happened in history, it's basically to sort of reinforce this collective worldview and to suppress the people who keep raising their hands and say, but wait a minute, and that's not welcome. So psychedelics are a catalyst to this different kind of consciousness. And I think they encourage people to, take charge of their own states of mind, of their own minds in a certain way. So, the war on drugs is really a war on consciousness.
Great talk by Graham Hancock, by the way.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a friend of his, and he's actually right on. He's got it exactly right. So these things are like the bioweapons in a certain way of the consciousness movement. I don't like the term bioweapons because that implies death and people suffer. These don't kill anybody. Well, rarely. And usually from stupid use, right? I mean, the drugs themselves are not inherent, but they're no inoculation against idiocy, and there's plenty of that. But rarely these things, considering the profound things that they do to consciousness, they're remarkably safe and remarkably non-toxic, and with just a little bit of planning and information and informed, and I'm sure you all know about Arrowwood and all that. And I tell people that's a very good source of information. If you're going to take something, you have a little experience with it, you can learn pretty much a lot, most of what you need to know if you spend a couple hours on Arrowwood. And they really have done the world a great service. So, but yeah, I think that basically they are catalysts for, for conscious evolution in the sense that they give us the tool to take charge of our own consciousness. And that's a very good thing.
I mean, imagine a world where we awaken to our co-creative consciousness, because it's really been used against us. And that's the power that they do have, that they understand the magic behind that to use it against us. Now, if we took back that power, the world would be a totally different place. And to your point in regards to nature, I mean, that is nature is such a wonderful teacher and within itself without the psychedelic. So add that on top of it. I mean, it's very powerful, but we've been so disconnected. We live in these, urban settings where there's a lot of light pollution. We can't see the night sky anymore. When's the last time anybody's seen a starlit sky? Sara and I lived in Africa for some time, and we were serving as Peace Corps volunteers over there, and we were able to sit in these incredible village settings where you would see the entire cosmos and just be able to connect on such a deep spiritual level. And that alone was a great catalyst for our growth and our personal development. So,
and many people, who take ayahuasca particularly, the others as well, but ayahuasca for many people is a revelation about this relationship to nature. They go, and whatever their relationship, they come away realizing that, we are part of nature. We don't own it. We don't dominate it. It's not for us to exploit. And this is the message that, Western civilization has been transmitting us for at least 2,000 years. The idea that we shouldn't value nature because our reward or whatever is in the next life. And this is such a crock, maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. I rather doubt it, but we have to learn to value nature in this space and time. So may I ask you, how old are you guys?
I'm 30, about to be 31, and
I'm 28.
28.
Okay, so you're in a wonderful age here. My daughter is 30, and so you're this millennial generation, which I have to say, you're fine people. I don't care what is said about the millennials. They are more conscious, kinder, more compassionate, more intelligent generation than I've seen come along in a long time. So, the fact that you guys do what you do, you go to Africa, you join the Peace Corps, you go to South America, people who push the envelope a little bit in their lives are people that make a difference. And so just keep on doing what you're doing. You're doing great.
Thank you very much.
So many people want, they're so afraid, to take any risk. They just want comfort. Gonna go to school, get my MBA, get my BMW, get my wife in the suburbs, and if that really is what they're passionate about, more power to them. But I think that most people, they're afraid to pursue what they have fire in the belly about. So, when I talk to young people, I say, whatever you have fire in the belly about, just go for it. Mm-hmm. And don't worry if it's going to get you a career, or anything. Well, I'm an example of it. We and my brother as well, we went for it because we were driven by passion. I would not say by clarity or any idea what the hell we were doing, in so many, just being driven forward by it. But we just felt compelled to do this, and we well, we turned out okay. I mean, maybe not even successful in many people's view, but I've had an amazing life, and I have never really regretted. I feel like I owe psychedelics a great debt for just helping me stumble into all these peculiar places, and not just the experiences, but the places I've traveled, the people I've met. It's been very rich, and I look at many people on the streets and go around in this society there. And again, I'm not boasting. I have compassion for these people, but there seem to be so many people, you can just tell on their faces how unhappy they are, how afraid they are, often how unhealthy they are. It doesn't need to be that way, and these psychedelics can be tools to just help people. As Sara said, you step back from your life a little bit, you can reevaluate it, come away with a better understanding of kind of your existential situation. And based on that, you can be a little happier. And maybe a little, everybody, you can't be happy, joy all the time, but you know what I'm saying. You live a more genuine life, a more mindful life, I think, if you have the gift of psychedelics.
Absolutely. I mean, I can attest that my first psychedelic experience definitely jolted me awake out of the societal slumber that I had just, succumbed to for the first, 20 years of my life. And after finally getting the courage and exploring safely these psychedelic realms of all kinds, both, mushrooms, LSD, DMT, ayahuasca, all kinds of experiences that just, it startles you awake, so to speak, but it also, there's this, you become thirsty for more. You want to keep pulling back more curtains and more curtains. How deep does this go? Who are we at the core? What's our core essence? And it's something that I agree with you wholeheartedly. If majority of the population partook in these experiences in a safe way and were able to integrate those lessons back into their daily lives, I can't even imagine what kind of world we would live in today, and following your passions. It's like you're fulfilling your calling, your soul imperative to just put one foot in front of the other and lead with that fire. And typically you end up in a place that you would never regret.
And that is a similar message that you shared, in the sense that, people need to get out of their comfort zones, take risks, and really let it all down and just go for it. Because, we get to the middle of our lives and we're thinking back to all of these times that we could have had the chance to make the decision to do something that may have jolted us out of our comfort zone, but we never did it. So why not live those moments, live those times, and really do it? Because it's just, once you do it, life unfolds in such a beautiful way that you can never imagine. And
even all the trials and tribulations that come along with it, they seem much more rewarding.
Yeah. Well, you can, the inherent nature, I guess, of taking chances is that it's not always going to go well, but that's kind of the price that you pay. I do think, I think the kind of world that we could live in, if psychedelics were more widely available and more people understood kind of what they are, and that's happening, but it's happening not fast enough, but it is happening. But I think that we'd live our lives with more clarity. We would have more empathy for other people, and we treat people better as a result of that. And, and we'd have a lot more compassion for the planet, and in some ways, a lot of times it originates in the so-called, mystical experience, in the sense of, we are all one, right? That's one of the chief things that the profound psychedelic experiences brings home to you. We are all one. And by we, I mean everything is all one. You know, we're not different from plants and animals, the planet, each other. And that's a big thing. So all of the things in our society that divide us, and they seem to be very much on the ascendant in the current political climate. Hopefully, this is temporary. It's fear based, is what it is. Because all the so much is going on that it's all about, you know, not bringing people together, but actually dividing people, and building fences, and it's like, you know, you over there and you're not like me, you know, so you must be dangerous or bad or whatever. This is very unhealthy, and psychedelics can help with that.
Well, and
I think partly also just the fact that a lot of these come from plants or mushrooms. I think that makes a big difference, because you can grow plants, you can grow mushrooms, and then you can do what plant people have always done. You share the plants, the knowledge of how to use them, the knowledge of how to grow them. So there's no way they can stop it. You know, this is something that happens across the back fences of gardeners everywhere. You know, if they happen to be turned on gardeners, so they have that, and that's a good thing. I mean, it's very stealthy, and because of that, it can't be stopped. You don't have to make a fuss to, or even be particularly public to share that knowledge with other people.
Absolutely. And, you know, the power of these plants in any form, you know, I've worked, I'm a certified herbalist, and, you know, for the past little while now, I've been really working with the plants and making my own tinctures and really getting into the spiritual aspect of these plants. And I mean, obviously, aside from my ayahuasca experiences, DMT experiences, and so on, but these plants are such masterful teachers, and it really brings us back into the feminine and where we need to be going, and shifting our consciousness and getting back into the feminine, because the feminine we've suppressed for so long. As you mentioned, this male dominated society, and more people need to get back in touch with that if we want to start to elevate our own consciousness.
Well, I think also the plants teach us to tune into the subtle energies and the way that they interact with our biochemistry and the way we interact with theirs, and to be able to be more conscious of those subtle energies and the interactions. You become more conscious of everyday life, your normal actions day to day. And so it can be translated from this ingestion of this plant, or it's, you know, experiencing its properties, to how you interact in your day-to-day life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, one of the things I think, that they make you understand, at least, is that we are really not running things.
Yes.
Things. Actually, the plants are running things, if you think about it. For one thing, they're sustaining life on Earth, through this miracle of photosynthesis that they're able to do. And you probably heard me rant about all that if you've listened to me.
Yeah, I love it.
A big deal. Photosynthesis is a big deal. And, and as a result, they are trying to maintain a biochemical equilibrium on the biospheric level, which we're busily undermining, but they're producing oxygen and taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and we're putting it back faster than, so some of those feedback mechanisms that are keeping equilibrium going are stressed right now. But whether or not, so I do believe in plant intelligence, I think that plants exhibit intelligent behavior, but they don't think the way we do. It's not that kind of intelligence, they respond to their environment through chemistry. Chemistry is plants. They respond to their environment through chemistry, and they come up with optimal solutions, and that's the kind of intelligence. And I have said many times in public, I think things like ayahuasca, they've escaped from the Amazon and they're essentially on the world stage. They're trying to get the monkeys to wake up, to the planet. So they've had to, get rather aggressive with this, but that's a good thing. So, you have to realize we're involved in a co-evolutionary process with everything on Earth, and a lot of that is mediated through chemistry, and it happens on time scales that we can barely comprehend. So this is the other thing. You have to take a long-term view of this, because Gaia, the Earth Mother, or whatever you want to call her, she works on time scales of hundreds of years, and I do not worry about life on Earth. I mean, we are not a threat to life on Earth as such. We can do serious damage to life on Earth, but we can do greater damage to ourselves. I mean, Gaia may reach a point where it's clear. It's like, okay, this is not working.
Eject.
Such a mess that we
get off the rock.
Get off the rock. Yeah, exactly. But Gaia's okay. Gaia will persist in some form until the sun burns out. So we've got a few billion years. Gaia's one tough bitch. It's hard to, undermine that. But certainly, in a sense, life on Earth is an ongoing experiment. If we look at evolution, evolution sort of brings up one species after another. It's a kind of experiment. 99% of the species that have ever lived on Earth are gone, and only those that happen to be here now. So, which category do we want to be in? The ones that are gone, or the ones that are still trying to live, still trying to make our way. So it's interesting anyway.
Have you read? I'm just curious. Have you read The Law of One?
I have not. No.
Okay. We were talking about We're All One before, and it's prompted me to ask you if you had read that, just kind of deviated from the conversation. And then another person, which I'm sure you read, is Stephen Buhner, and his talking, his lectures about plant intelligence, and also his books, which are very just brilliant.
Yeah, I am a real fan of Stephen Buhner. Definitely, he has the right idea. There's another interesting person you may know about who writes about mushrooms more. His name is Simon Powell. Have you heard of him?
No, I don't think. Have you?
He's written. The first one he wrote is The Psilocybin Solution.
Yes.
You know that one? You've heard that one?
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it, no.
The second one is called Darwin's Unfinished Business. Intelligence Manifests in Nature. And the third one is called The Magic Mushroom Explorer. Maybe I have it right here. I do have it right here, but I don't know. Anyway, those are all, this one here.
Nice.
Very nice.
Writes very intelligently and humorously about a lot of these things. Quite entertaining books. I highly recommend them, and it's sort of in the vein of Buhner, but it's more focused on the fungi. There are many good ones out there.
There sure is.
What do you think that we could do? Those of us who are awakened to the power of psychedelics used appropriately, what do you think that we could do to help integrate this even more into the masses? Obviously there's people like you and your colleagues and so many people who are working diligently and spreading awareness and knowledge and research. But what could even just the everyday person do to help move this along?
Well, I think in the first place, anybody that really understands the importance of psychedelics and is into it, is by definition not an everyday person.
That's true. Touche.
We are special people because we have this gift and this perception. Not that we really did anything to earn it. We're just blessed, But I think you have to find the others. There are interest groups. You're probably you're probably not in universities or anything like that anymore. You're actually in the real world. Mm-hmm. Not that they aren't, but in a lot of campuses now there is, psychedelic clubs. There is actually a campus-wide, nationwide movement called the Psychedelic Club. And so there are a lot of interest groups at universities. There are conferences. I don't know if you can go, like the MAPS conference back in April with psychedelic science. Really a landmark conference, So I think it's just use the tools you have. Social media, for all its flaws, is very powerful for this. And there are interest groups on Facebook that you can join or you can let other people know about. I don't know if you know. Can I put up a couple plugs here?
Absolutely, please do.
Well, have you heard of ESPD 50?
No.
Oh, interesting. I thought we covered everything. Well, ESPD 50 is a conference that I organized in, and it stands for Ethnopharmacology Search for Psychoactive Drugs. And 50 is that it was the 50th anniversary of the first conference by that name that was held in San Francisco in 1967, sponsored by the U.S. government. And
interesting
symposium volume, which was kind of the state of the art at the time. There was a closed conference. The public was not invited. Taxpayer, the only thing the taxpayer ever got out of this was the symposium volume, which was published. And for a long time, you could order it from the U.S. government printing office. Well, it's long out of date, but you can get a PDF of it from Arrowwood, actually. And the conference was supposed to, be the first of a series, kind of once every 10 years, there'd be one of these conferences to kind of look at the state of the art. Well, the war on drugs came along and, that never happened. So I felt that the book was really influential in my life. So I felt like I wanted to do this anniversary symposium, and everything fell together, and we did. We did it. And if you go to espd50.com, you can see the conference. You can see what we did. One of the things we're doing, we're bringing out the original book from 1967 and the 2017 book as a collector's edition box set. So we're pre-selling those things off the website. And then in order to, and you can find out about that on that site and also the Facebook, which links from there. But one of the things we wanted to do was not be elitist, not be exclusive like the first one was. And so with social media, we were able to do that. So we live streamed that thing, all 3 days of it, over about 12 Facebook platforms.
Wow.
And at various times, we had 50,000 people looking at these lectures.
Wow.
So that was an amazing thing, and over the period of 3 days, about 500,000 people clicked our website.
Wow.
And all the videos are now up there. They're actually at DMT, the spirit molecule, and it's one of the places they're posted. You probably know that forum,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you go there, or if you just search on ESPD50 on Facebook, it'll come up. So
Great.
all those videos are there from all 3 days of the conference. So this is how you do it. You do it by using these tools to educate people about it, and then they get excited. I mean, a whole lot more people know what the word ethnopharmacology means, as a result of this conference. So it was great fun. It was a lot of work, but the book is in progress, and people it'll be finished hopefully by the end of December. We're almost there. We've got all the papers. It's getting laid out. We hope to go to press. Well, we hope to start the presses rolling, shall we say, early in December. It should be available sometime in January.
Great. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, the work that you guys are doing, it's incredibly inspirational, and I want to encourage our listeners to keep up with that. And if you're not familiar with the psychedelic realm, educate yourself through books and websites and, like he'd said, forums, and just explore, because there's nothing to lose.
There is more information now about this than there ever was. So I put just espd50.com. And,
Fantastic.
I'd also like to tell people about I organize ayahuasca retreats about twice a year in the Sacred Valley. So can I plug that?
Yes,
and
do.
we might even join you.
We'll show up.
That would be lovely if you could do that. It's the BioLife Sciences /events. And the link is there. You can go there and look at, we have 2 coming up in January back to back, which is not usually the way we do it, but as it happens, there are 2 in January. So if you know anyone that might want to come,
we'll spread it. We'll share it.
And what else? So, you know about the Brotherhood of the Screaming Abyss, surely.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I guess that's about it. I don't know what else to plug right now, but yeah.
Well, wonderful. Then our listeners know where to find you and keep up with you. That's wonderful. You also have a Facebook, right, that people can like and follow?
Several Facebook pages, yeah. We've got probably the Dennis McKenna public figure page is the place to look.
Awesome.
We'll get you tagged in the podcast and get people sent over there as well through that.
Yeah, and do let me know, because I can put that up on my Facebook page in different places. I mean, it's you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Get the word out, so let me know when and where it's posted, and I'll make sure I get it linked up.
Will do.
You know what? I'd like to ask you just one more quick, short question. It's kind of off the beaten path, but if
never short, but only
if you could give a little bit of insight, what is something that we can all do every day to contribute to the well-being of our society and world at large?
Oh boy.
She had to put you on the spot, Dennis.
Yeah.
That's actually a question from my brother, who's a therapist, so it's appropriate that it came from him.
Well, I think that, one thing we can do, it's very simple. You don't have to take any drugs. You don't have to spend any money, but you can do this every day. And just remind yourself how lucky you are to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful thing, how marvelous this universe is that we live in. That's what keeps me going. It's I've long since given up on understanding, thinking I'm going to understand it all. Probably not. But I'm always going to be surprised. So that's a good thing. Every day you get up, there's something new to learn, and that keeps you going.
I love it.
Yeah. Gratitude and curiosity. If I had to use 2 words, gratitude and curiosity.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Great tools to have in the toolbox. Thank you so much, Dennis, for coming onto our show. It's been a pleasure.
Very much a pleasure for me, too. So good luck to you guys. Keep doing it. Keep trekking and keep in touch.
Will do.
You.
Thanks, Dennis.
Okay. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dennis, for that much-needed conversation.
I just wanted to go forever.
Sarah and I talk a lot about all different things. We explore the cosmos together, and
Every day, guys. Our
Every day.
conversations are deep.
so it's really nice to connect with other people that are on that same level and that are able to have those sorts of conversations. We just really enjoy that when we can get those people on. So again, thank you to Dennis for coming on. But now, your health tip of the episode. So you might be a little intimidated to dive right into the psychedelic realm, which is understandable. But if you want to kind of ease into it, you might want to try some blue lotus.
It's a very subtle plant. You're not going to go tripping or anything. And guess what? It's 100% legal.
Yes, so this plant has been used for thousands of years in religious ceremonies, and it originated from the Nile River in Egypt. So this is the thing. With any herb, you want to make sure that you're getting high quality. And it's always, it can be a little bit difficult to find because there's a lot of imposters out there, or they're not harvesting the plant the right way. So I recommend that you go to one of your local herb shops and talk to them, see what recommendations they have for you. But blue lotus is incredible. So they would use these in religious ceremonies, as I mentioned, to reach higher levels of consciousness. And the plant is also fantastic for relaxation. It's calming, euphoric. It actually has some aphrodisiac qualities.
Ooh.
So, like I said, you can find this sometimes at some local herb shops. Sometimes they might have to special order it, but it can be drinking.
Drinking.
You can drink it as a tea, or you can actually smoke it. So,
Which we have not done, but we have heard from a reliable source that it really enhanced her meditation practice.
And lucid dreaming.
Exactly.
So, check it out. Blue Lotus.
Yes. Once again, thanks for sticking around. If you stuck around for this whole episode, you are a trooper. It was a lengthy one, but a good one.
Yeah, so again, as I mentioned in the intro, if there is anybody that you would like us to get on, we will do our best to bring them onto the show, or any other topics you want to cover. If you give us a topic, say, hey, I want to hear more about this. We'll find the person that is a good, credible source to bring on to speak on that topic. So reach out to us, send us a message. We love hearing from you.
And leave a review.
And please leave a review. We love them.
You can't resist my sing-song voice.
No, you can't. You don't want to hear my singing voice.
No, you don't. You don't want to hear it.
We'll leave that one up to Sarah. Take care, guys.